Okay, everyone, we're all set. Welcome to the second meeting for the Governor's Salary Commission. I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Bruce Blackson.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for making yourself available at 5 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to have staff and anybody on this call correct me if I'm wrong. But at the conclusion of the first meeting, we had pretty much reached a consensus of which offices needed raises and approximately the amount of the raises. And the main question was how to implement those raises in terms of stages, how it would be spread out. And since then, I forget who, but the committee asked that staff give us some parameters and some choices that have been circulated. I trust that everyone's had an opportunity to look at it, so I will open it up for discussion to see if we need other suggestions or if there's suggestions or scenarios that we want to adopt. And if there's other business that I've not included, please correct me. But Ken, is that about where we're at?
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely correct. So when you're ready, as we discuss these options, we can put the actual salary scenarios live up on the screen for a minute.
Okay. We seem to be driven from the bottom this year rather than the top. Do we want to take, is it the committee's idea to take what we call the, I don't want to say lesser, or the medium.
Middle
statewide officers. Yeah. The lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the comptroller, and the treasurer. Do we want to look at that first and kind of work from there?
That'd be great.
Okay. So I'm happy to open it up to discussion. Do you want to, would it help everyone if we shared the screen and put up some of the scenarios?
Yes.
That would be helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Will do. Hold on one second.
Bruce, I don't know whether others heard from members of the legislature. I know that we had talked about, how the members of the General Assembly might feel about what we were considering. And I got a call from Maggie McIntosh, who was very much in line with the approach that you're suggesting, and saying that to her mind and others, I think she mentioned Adrian Jones, the focus should be on the middle offices, that was the most important, and they seem to be too low or far lower than the others.
Yeah, I think we were all, I wouldn't say shocked because we kind of know what's going on, but it's a little bit interesting to see that, the deputies are making more than their bosses, and we're still not going to fix that, but we're going to maybe get it a little closer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try and read this. It looks awfully small on my laptop here, but I'm going to review. Did anyone else want to give an overview other than Ellie's comments? Did anyone else have any observations in the couple of weeks since we met?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the other thing that I was going to beyond what the how these salaries compare to other public officials, which we talked about last time. The fact of the matter is, these salaries have been now frozen for 8 years. The state employees, as you mentioned, some of the state employees are making more, and the state employees have continued to have bump ups. The workload certainly isn't getting any easier. In fact, as we've seen, state government continues to get flooded with demands, and these jobs particularly have all that. So I think the complexity of the job is quite significant. And then the part of it is, you just have the expenses issue, because the reality of it is all these jobs come with expenses, not all of which are reimbursed, but it's just sort of a nature of that particular position. So for all those reasons, plus the fact that as I said last time, the circuit court judges and the members of Congress are in this pay range. I think it's appropriate.
Okay,
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, would it help if I read out the particular scenarios?
I can read them and I think I can summarize them. Scenario one, all the scenarios get us to the year 4 at the same level because we agreed on a final. The question was how we got there. Scenario one uses round numbers where we give a big raise in year 1, keep it for 2 years, and then just bump it. It's certainly the simplest scenario. Scenario 2 gives the same large raise in year 1, which seemed to be the consensus of the committee, though I'm happy to debate that again, and then gave 3 raises more spread out equally over the next 3 years after that. Whereas scenario 3 was more of a it's a $25,000 raise spread out almost equally over the 4 years without the large bump in year 1. So would you say, Ken, that was the right summary of the 3 distinctions?
Right on point.
Okay. So I'm happy to open debate or open it up for a motion, however this committee wants to look at it.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I still personally prefer going in 4 steps, but could support any of these.
So there's 4 equal steps, which is scenario 3,
Right.
and then there's the 4 steps with a catch-up raise in year 1, and then 3 more or less equal steps. Did you have a preference?
Yeah, I was saying I meant 3 when I said
Okay.
4 steps, but again, that's just, you can make arguments for any of them.
And just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, right now, did we want to talk about the constitutional officers, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, Comptroller, Treasurer? Second paragraph, basically.
Yes. Well, I thought we were talking about the middle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have similar scenarios in the governor as well as the Secretary of State, but they're more compressed because their raises are not as large. And I thought that our first meeting, the focus was on what we're going to now call the middle officers.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that we approve scenario 2 for the middle officers. And the reason I say that, I think you heard last time, if it were just up to me, I would have had to go to 165 and then 175,000. I do think scenario 2 is a nice compromise, but I think it's important to have the initial bump up be substantial because of the fact that there's been such a delay since these salaries were increased the last time. And, we do want to, I think, properly compensate people who, given their qualifications, often could do much, much better in the private sector. I realize that's not the only reason for compensation. People should be in these jobs for other reasons, but still, I think it's important to recognize the seriousness of their jobs. I just think they're overdue for a substantial increase. So with that, I would move scenario 2 as the increases for the Lieutenant Governor, the Attorney General, the Comptroller, and the Treasurer.
I'll second that.
I would second that motion as well.
Okay. So let's see. We heard from Ellie, Jamar, Lindsay, Bruce. I don't see everyone on my screen, so I apologize that I don't want to leave anyone out. I'd like an opportunity for everyone to be heard. We have,
Mr. Chair, I concur with the motion in a second.
okay. Is there anyone else that wants to be heard on this or that prefers something other than scenario 2?
Mr. Chair, I wonder if I could ask Bruce why he would go with the increase, the very small increases. In other words, with scenario 2 as opposed to scenario 1.
out of deference to my good friend and former colleague, Madam Treasurer,
Okay,
frankly, because as I say, if it were just up to me, it would be scenario one that we would follow, but I certainly find scenario two acceptable.
how about scenario one?
Well, I find
You prefer 4 steps, I say, okay.
scenario one to me is acceptable as well. I was just trying to find a compromise that, would seem to be suitable for everyone. Hoping
It's all very similar. I mean, really, when you get down to the dollars, it's, I just thought that 4 steps maybe set a precedent for going on and not doing this herky jerky thing into the future.
It's interesting because if you look back historically, they do it almost differently every 4 years when they do raises. It's every which way. It's a big bump. It's little bumps. It's equal raises. It's unequal raises. So I'm not sure what precedent we'd be setting. And I agree. They're all. I mean, the difference between 1 and 2 is a few $1,000s in year 2 and 3. Years 1 and 4 are identical.
Mhm.
Right now, there's a motion and a second for scenario 2, but I certainly want an opportunity for everyone to be heard. If anyone thinks wants to convince the people that I heard at least 4 or 5 votes for scenario 2, that scenario 1 or 3 is better.
I prefer 3 for the reason I've said 3 times now, but I'm happy to go with.
I would prefer 1, just because going 15, 5, 3, and 2, it seems, I don't know, petty in some ways, but I can support scenario 2 if everyone is, if that's the consensus.
Could I call the question?
All right. Not hearing any further debate. There's all in favor of scenario 2 for Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, Comptroller, and Treasurer, with a raise in year 1 to 165,000, year 2 170,000, year 3 173,000, and year 4 175,000. Signify by saying aye.
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 And are there any nays? All right, we can report that it passed unanimously. I'm going to move to Secretary of State and save Governor for last, if that's all right with this committee. And there are similar, as described, different numbers, but it's similar fashion. Either the bumps to round numbers in 1, the equal numbers in 3, or the middle ground in 2. I would think for purposes of continuity, we might want to adopt scenario 2 again for similar logic, but I don't want to make that motion.
I will make that motion, Mr. Chair, that we adopt scenario 2 for Secretary of State.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have adopted scenario 2 for Secretary of State, which is a raise to 112,500 in year 1, 116,000 in year 2, 118,500 in year 3, and 120,000 in year 4. And the governor, we did differently with a start in terms of percentages. The governor got by far the smallest percentage raises over a 4-year term, going $15,000 from 180 to 195. Again, I won't recap the scenarios because they are similar in terms of concept, and ask if we want to adopt scenario 2 as well. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'm going to surprise people. If nobody else has a strong feeling, I actually favor scenario 3, and I'll tell you why. It is not at all in derogation of the governor's task or the current governor's service. It's just that the salary is already higher than what all of the other statewide officials make, and it's also in recognition of all the additional benefits that the governor gets. So, if we vote scenario 3, the governor will still end up being paid $195,000 by the 4th year, and that will certainly put the governor up still in a high ranking relative to the other governors across the country. So for those reasons, I would move scenario 3.
I don't think that's illogical, and it's actually consistent, Bruce, with our first meeting, I think. And Chuck, did you second that?
I did.
Okay. Is there any discussion? The motion on the floor is scenario 3, which are equal raises for the governor from 180 to well, almost equal, from 180 to 195. Hearing no discussion. Well, okay, hearing no discussion, all in favor signify by aye.
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 Any nays? All right, we have a plan. We now have to circulate a report that the staff is very adept at preparing, that will require all of our signatures, signed nicely, because it'll be on the internet forever. And then we'll talk about how we're going to do this electronically. Should we adjourn? Are we now off the YouTube part of our meeting? Or
Well, Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
going to turn it back to you, Ken.
yeah, I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to officially adjourn, and we would just, Steve and myself would just hold you all for just 2 minutes so we can let you know how we're going to send you the protocols for the signature process.
All right, then we are adjourned unless there's some new business or some other business anyone wants to address before we do adjourn the formal part of the meeting. Okay,